I'm Lizzy Stroud, and myself and Dave have set up a business converting railway carriages into holiday accommodation. We started with this carriage, which is the old luggage van, but we now have 4 carriages on site in St Germans and 1 down at Hale, and we're currently doing up another carriage which was used by Queen Victoria for her Diamond Jubilee. As a hobby, I play in a band called Wurlitza, and we put live soundtracks to silent films. So 2 completely different things. and I write a bit of poetry. We came to live in a train station because we were travelling down to the Isles of Scilly. We were looking for a house, but at the time we could only get a really small mortgage of about £30,000. We went past the station and we saw the all inquiries sign up. So we pursued it. It wasn't for sale for domestic use, it was for commercial use. So basically it was being sold as a shell and it was completely derelict. But we thought, well, it's quite a bit of space and it would make an interesting conversion, so that's what we did. And the vendors were very good actually. They waited while we got planning permission, and they didn't put the price up like they could have done, because obviously once a building had permission then it was worth a lot more. And so we did it all completely from scratch. Well, we've had a lot of interesting characters. Just being in St Germans in the station, we have all sorts of people who turn up sometimes, and that can be really interesting in itself. But guests-wise, we have some fantastic people who've come to stay and who've become really good friends over the years. We started up in 1998 when I was pregnant with Walter, our first child. Actually, Walter was born in the railway station, and so was Poppy. Some of the people that came in the late 90s are still coming now. So a few sort of famous people, and in Port Eliot Festival we've had record promoters and people like that. But I'd actually say that our day-to-day guests are as interesting as anybody really, because they all come from such a wide range of different walks of life, and because they all have this great enthusiasm for trains. This is the old luggage van train log, because we get a lot of rail enthusiasts that come. And our friend Tom O'Reilly, who's a bookbinder, he made this for us. Because we've got mirrored glass on the windows, then we do get people who do sometimes check themselves in the mirror and such like, which is quite funny. And often you can watch all sorts of events unfolding and people don't realise you're there. We've had some interesting episodes. Particularly from people who've been thrown off a train. We had one quite entertaining episode, and a chap, it wasn't entertaining at the time, the chap was obviously clearly thrown off the train, the last train of the day, and it was pouring with rain and he was shouting a lot, so he wasn't really very safe to approach. So we called the police and said, is there any chance somebody could come? And they didn't come, and then he went to sleep in a big puddle in front of a travelling post office, so I was quite worried about him. So I took him some blankets, some duvets and a flask and some food. And of course by this time it was 1 in the morning and I was just in my dressing gown, and so I came out with all this food and these blankets and such like, and he took a look at me and he said, "Oh, are you staying the night here too?" Which was really... I've learnt an awful lot. I do have a passion for anyone who has a passion, so I like the whole rail enthusiast thing, because you meet people who are genuinely interested and interesting in what they have to say. I've learnt a huge amount about railways from talking to people. My primary passion for railways is for travelling, I have to admit. I really like travelling by train. So we've gone from St Germans to Morocco, for example. We've made our way down to Fez. We went down to Turkey through Romania and Bulgaria, and that was quite hairy because we got robbed along the way, so that was quite an interesting adventure. The hospitality we experienced in both Morocco and Turkey was extraordinary. The people were so kind. It made me realise when I came back that I wanted to be like that too. And I like to hope that when people arrive at St Germans Station completely stranded, and we have ended up with people who've stayed the night here because they've ended up being lost, or they've got from the wrong stop. I do think actually travelling opens your mind and broadens your experience. And the trains are a great way to travel, because of course, especially in Europe, you can go to sleep in one country and wake up somewhere completely different. And in the middle of the night, you've got all these comings and goings, and sometimes at 3 in the morning you'll get a knock on the door for the passports, and it's a great way of travelling. I think what quite amuses people sometimes is we have band practice in the music room, And because I'm a musician by trade, we don't really have a big sitting room or anything, we have a music room. And it must be very strange for people sitting on the platform hearing, I don't know, Iggy Pop's A Passenger or something coming out, or one of our own things, you know, to hear music coming from the station. And as a band, it's really fun. The station building was completely derelict when we bought it. It came with a garden, about 260 square metres, which is really good size. And it was covered in rubble and brambles and such like. It was just basically a mess. And after 2 or 3 years, we thought, oh, well, let's try and tidy this up a bit. And we happened to spot what looked like a platform edge. So we thought, I wonder if there's still a siding there. So we got the spades out and dug, and there was still a siding there, and it still had the rails. So we thought, oh, if we got a railway carriage, then we could put up our friends. And because it cost us £8,000, which at the time was a bit of inheritance we'd got from Dave's gran, we thought, well, let's try and recoup what we spent by letting it out. So we got into the business completely by chance. So we have a slip carriage, which was 1898. It's a really interesting carriage because what they used to do was they used to go on the fast trains from London. And so instead of a train stopping, the guard would uncouple the carriage as it went along. And so the guard would then bring this carriage to stop at the station while the train continued without losing any speed. So you had to be very careful to make sure that you were getting on the right carriage when you got on in London, because you might end up in Taunton instead of Penzance. Our one was built in 1898, and it's a fascinating carriage. It's got a first class compartment, it's got a second class compartment and 2 third class compartments, and then it's also got the guard's van. And interestingly, every single compartment had its own toilet as well, except for the guard, who presumably had to make do with a bottle or something, I don't know. Surprisingly, didn't have many accidents with slip carriages, but there was always a risk the carriage would go slightly short of the platform if the guard wasn't really skilled. I can see train.